We all have bad days. You know, you stub your toe, you spill your coffee, or maybe you sent a risky text to the wrong person. It feels like the universe is plotting against you. But trust me, bro, the universe doesn't care about your spilled latte. However, for the people on this list, the universe didn't just care, it took it personally. From a perfectionist chef who couldn't handle a late delivery, to a king who conquered empires but couldn't conquer a flight of stairs. Today, we are exploring the most ironically brutal ways historical figures have punched their final clock. Let's begin. The year is 1671. You find yourself in the heart of France, arguably the fanciest place on earth at the time. You are Francois Vatel, and you have the most stressful job in the entire kingdom. You aren't a king, and you aren't a general. You are a maître d'hôtel, which is a fancy French way of saying you are the guy responsible for making sure the king doesn't have a single second of boredom or discomfort. And your boss isn't just any king, he is Louis XIV, the Sun King, a man who ruled for 72 years. Your mandatory mission is to organize a legendary 3-day banquet for the king and 3,000 of his most judgmental friends with only 2 weeks to prepare. The universe decides to play a cruel prank on you because over 6,000 guests suddenly show up to the party instead of the planned number. You are now stress sweating over the idea of feeding a small army of aristocrats who have never felt hunger in their lives. The situation deteriorates quickly when the rain ruins the fireworks display you spent weeks planning. This sends you into a downward spiral of anxiety as the pressure physically eats you alive. Friday morning arrives with the promise of a fresh seafood course, but the delivery turns into a complete disaster. You placed orders at every port in the region to ensure fresh seafood for thousands, yet only a tiny amount of fish actually shows up. A normal person might see this as a simple logistical delay, but your sleep-deprived brain views this as a stain on your honor that can never be washed away. You decide that you cannot face the shame, so you retreat to your room to wedge your sword against the door and drive it through your own stomach. You chose death over the embarrassment of a bad buffet, but the universe has one final punchline waiting for you. The wagons containing the rest of the fish roll in only moments after Vatel takes his last breath. There was enough seafood to feed the entire castle twice over, so the party continued while the guests gorged themselves on the fish Vatel died for. Talk about a hostile work environment. But if you think dying over fish is tragic, imagine dying because you were too polite to use the bathroom. Now we travel to the 16th century where you are Tycho Brahe. You are not just some random guy looking at the stars, because you are actually the world's greatest astronomer of your time. You are a Danish nobleman with unlimited funding to chart over 700 stars and track the movement of the planets before telescopes even existed. You are a literal genius who hired an apprentice named Johannes Kepler just to help you crunch the numbers. Life is good until you decide to attend a banquet in Prague in 1601. The wine is flowing and the conversation is stimulating, but you suddenly realize that you made a critical error. You really need to use the bathroom. A normal person would simply excuse themselves to relieve the pressure, but you are a noble in the 1600s. Etiquette dictates that leaving the table before the host is the height of rudeness. You decide that your reputation is more important than your bladder, so you sit there in agonizing discomfort while trying to maintain a polite smile. You finally head home to drain the dragon, but you discover that it is too late because the plumbing no longer works. You can barely manage a dribble because the pressure has caused severe internal damage. You spend the next 11 days in excruciating pain as a bladder infection slowly shuts down your body. The man who mapped the heavens and changed our understanding of the universe dies simply because he was too polite to take a bathroom break. It is terrifying to think that your own body can turn against you like that, but sometimes the danger comes from the accessories you wear. You are now Isadora Duncan, and you grew up in San Francisco with a tragic family history. But you turned your pain into art by revolutionizing dance itself. You rejected the rigid and boring styles of the time because you wanted to express yourself with free-flowing movement. You conquered stages in London, Paris, and Berlin while becoming a global icon who lived for the drama and the aesthetic. The date is September 14th, 1927, and you are in Nice, France. You decide to go for a ride in a convertible because you want to enjoy the open air and look fabulous while doing it. You wrap your signature abnormally long silk scarf around your neck because it completes the look. You wave goodbye to your friends and tell the driver to step on it, but you do not realize that your fashionable accessory is about to become a murder weapon. The scarf flutters in the wind behind you as the car speeds up, but it drifts too close to the ground. The silk fabric catches in the spokes of the rear wheel and wraps tightly around the axle. In a split second, the scarf tightens with the force of the moving vehicle and snaps your neck before you even have time to react. The spotlight fades on your life instantly at just 50 years old. It is a brutal irony that the very symbol of her free-flowing spirit became the tight noose that ended her life. This proves that your existence can be extinguished in a literal heartbeat. But sometimes the universe gets bored of these singular tragedies and decides to go on a killing spree. Let's speed things up with a mystery that feels like pure science fiction but is actually a terrifying historical reality known as spontaneous human combustion. We are traveling back to 1731 to meet an Italian noblewoman named Cornelia Zangari-Bandi. Cornelia was 66 years old and had a bit of a reputation for loving her brandy way too much. But she didn't just drink it, she also rubbed a camphorated brandy mixture all over her body to help with her aches and pains. Essentially, she was marinating herself in flammable liquid like a human Molotov cocktail. The maid left her sleeping peacefully, but when she returned the next morning, she found a scene straight out of a horror movie. Cornelia was gone. In her place, 4 feet away from the bed, was a pile of ash. But here's the part that will haunt you. Her lower legs were found completely untouched with the stockings still on them. Between the legs was her shrunken, half-burnt skull and 3 blackened fingers. The fire had incinerated her body so thoroughly that it turned her bones to dust. Yet the furniture in the room was completely untouched. Everything was just covered in a gross, smelly, greasy soot. It is suspected that she caught fire from a nearby oil lamp and burned like a candle wick from the inside out. It is hard to top the mystery of a woman who spontaneously turned into an ashtray, but our final entry manages to do it by being the most frustratingly underwhelming death in human history. And finally, we arrive at the heavy hitter of irony. If the previous entries made you cringe, this one might just make you throw your phone across the room. We are looking at Emperor Humayun, the ruler of the massive Mughal Empire in India. Humayun had a rough start. He inherited the throne at 22, but he was inexperienced and surrounded by enemies, including his own brothers who were constantly undermining him. In 1540, he lost everything. A rival ruler kicked him out, and Humayun was forced into exile in Persia for 15 long, humiliating years. But Humayun was not a quitter. He spent those 15 years grinding, making alliances, and building an army to take back what was his. In 1555, against all odds, he marched back into India, defeated his enemies, and reclaimed the Mughal Empire. He had done the impossible. He was back on top, ready to rule for decades. But the universe had a different plan. Just 1 year later, in 1556, Humayun was walking out of his royal library with an armful of books. He heard the call to daily prayer and, being a pious man, his muscle memory took over. He attempted to kneel on the spot to pray, but he was standing at the top of a steep stone staircase. In a moment of pure clumsiness, the emperor, who had survived decades of war, betrayal, and exile, simply tripped. He tumbled down the entire flight of stairs and bashed his skull open on a sharp stone corner. He didn't die in a glorious battle or from a political assassination. He died 3 days later because he slipped on some stairs while holding too many books. It is the ultimate cosmic joke. You can conquer an empire, but you cannot conquer gravity. So there you have it. If there is one lesson to take away from today, it is that life is incredibly fragile and often hilariously unfair. You can be the most perfect planner like Vatel, the most brilliant scientist like Brahe, or the most powerful king like Humayun, but all it takes is a slippery step, a delayed delivery, or a long scarf to end the show. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? We spend our whole lives stressing over deadlines, embarrassing emails, and awkward handshakes, thinking those are the end of the world. But the reality is, the Grim Reaper doesn't care about your resume or how polite you are at a dinner party. He has a wicked sense of humor, and sometimes the punchline is just a fish delivery arriving 5 minutes too late. So don't take yourself too seriously, because the universe certainly doesn't. Go eat that extra slice of pizza, text that person back, and stop holding your pee in for the sake of manners. Just look both ways before you cross the street. Maybe use the bathroom when you need to, and definitely hold the handrail when you use the stairs. If you enjoyed watching the universe bully historical figures, check out the video on the screen right now. It is another dive into the dark and curious side that you definitely do not want to miss. Thank you guys so much for watching, and subscribe for more stories like this, and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.